Very warm welcome to a very topical and pertinent theme currently, one around health systems. We have a distinguished panel of guests this evening, Dr. Devi Shetty, Dr. Swati Piramal, and Dr. R.S. Sharma. I would like to briefly introduce the moderator for this session, Dr. Swati Piramal, after which I'd like ma'am to take over and introduce the other two panelists and then proceed to moderating the session. Thank you very much for being here and a warm welcome again. Dr. Swati Piramal is the Vice Chairperson of the Piramal Group and amongst India's leading scientists and industrialists. She founded the Gopi Krishna Piramal Memorial Hospital in Mumbai and was instrumental in launching several pan-India public health campaigns and has authored several books on nutrition and health, and also written public policy papers on topics such as patent protection, intellectual property, and data protection. She has also served as the first woman president of India's Apex Chamber of Commerce and is also a director of the Piramal Foundation. Dr. Piramal is a director on the board of Nestle India, Allergan India, and EssilorLuxottica. She is also a board member of Dean's Advisors to the Harvard Business School and the Harvard School of Public Health. She is the recipient of several awards, including the Padma Shri, the Knight of the Order of Merit, one of France's highest honors for medicine and trade, and she is also a winner of the Global Empowerment Award, awarded to her by Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Kent. It is indeed a privilege to have all of you here. We only otherwise get an opportunity to listen to you on the news, and it is our privilege to have you all on the same forum. Thank you all again, and over to you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Thank you, Napina. Very warm welcome to Dr. R.S. Sharma and also to Dr. Devi Shetty. I'd first like to introduce both of them. And before that, I thought that we should at least set up a definition of what we are going to talk about today. And that word is very important, resilience. And resilience, I was looking for a good definition from around all the papers in the world. And I found this one from the Lancet, that resilience is the ability of systems to mount a robust response to unforeseen, unpredicted, and unexpected demands, and to resume or even continue normal operations. As this field is emerging in health sciences, we know about it in materials, but not so much in health sciences. I think it gives us the ability to look not at hindsight and to look at being what in military terms they call forehanded or upstream, looking at and solving problems before they happen. So we couldn't have two of the most famous people in India speaking on the subject. I first introduced Dr. R.S. Sharma. He is the CEO, National Health Authority, is responsible for the Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana and the National Digital Health Mission. Dr. Sharma also serves as chairperson of the Empowered Group on Vaccine Administration, and which is called CoVIN. He was also inducted into the high-level vaccine administration panel headed by Dr. V.K. Paul, a member of the Niti Aayog, National Institution for Transforming India, where he leads the health and nutrition vertical. As a founding director and the Director General and Mission Director of UIDAI, he helps formulate and launch Aadhaar, India's first and the world's largest biometric identity system. He also authored a book, Making of Aadhaar, the world's largest identity platform, capturing his experiences. He's a member of the Indian Administrative Service, IAS 1978, and the Jharkhand Cadre. Welcome, Dr. R.S. Sharma.
Thank you very much, Dr. Piramal.
And then we have perhaps the most famous doctor of all time of India, Dr. Devi Shetty, the cardiac surgeon and chairman of the Executive National Director of Narayan Health, which he founded in 2000. He initiated the concept of a micro insurance scheme in Karnataka, which eventually led to the Karnataka government implementing the Yashvini program. a micro health insurance scheme for rural farmers. Dr. Shetty is professor of the Rajiv Gandhi University of Medical Sciences in Bangalore and University of Minnesota Medical School in the USA. He's an active member of the European Association for Cardiothoracic Surgery since 1996 and a life member of the Indian Medical Association. He's a recipient of a number of awards and honors, most noteworthy being the Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan awards. The Raj Yotsava Award in 2002, conferred by the government of Karnataka, the Outstanding Social Entrepreneurship Award by the Confederation of the Indian Industry, and the President's Award by the American College of Cardiology, and the Lifetime Achievement Award by FICCI. Now, this is just a short list because I'm sure it will go into many pages. But I have to say one story before I invite Dr. Devi Shetty. I had a little girl from our teaching training college in Bagad, Rajasthan, which is a village, and she had a heart condition. And when she came to Mumbai, I went from doctor to doctor, hospital to hospital, to find out if somebody could treat this condition. And everyone put up their hands and said they couldn't do it. And when I took her finally to Dr. Devi Shetty, he did the surgery so well that today that little girl is become a really grown up and a really proud human being of what has been achieved for her medically. Thank you, Dr. Devi Shetty, for all the work you do on behalf of all the thousands and millions of patients. I have to say thank you for the work that you do.
Thanks.
And I want to invite you both to comment about the sort of first question, and that is, if we are to do resilience, we are to do public health, how do we anticipate the adverse event? How do we then look at it as an unforeseen event, and then how do we adapt to it, and then how do we come back to normal? Now, of course, the IT systems and technology are going to be a big driver of our response to adverse events. And Dr. R.S. Sharma has done so much work in the National Digital Health Mission. I thought I'd direct the first question to him, saying Prime Minister's advice was always use technology to beat adverse events. And how has he done that? And how will India?
Thank you very much, Dr. P. Raman, for your question and for a wonderful and very generous introduction. And I really feel privileged to be in the company of Dr. Devi Shetty and you. It's a real privilege, because I am simply a bureaucrat. I've just been doing my job as an officer of the government of India and the state government. So I really, and you people have done something really outstanding. So I hats off to you and to your contribution to the society and the country. As you rightly said, technology is a driver, but I must say technology is not a driver. Technology is merely an enabler. Technology enables to do many things better than what we could do them otherwise. So that's one part. But normally, obviously, health care is a matter of real bricks and mortar, Narayan Hridayalaya or the other institutions who are really delivering, health services. There are many things which technology can enable, but there are many things which obviously technology cannot do. Operations, obviously, technology cannot do. Operations can certainly be aided. Of course, now you have 5G coming so that you can have a remote surgeries, but that's a far away idea as far as we are concerned in India here. And I think the three major, ingredients or major, attributes of a good health system, which is accessibility, affordability, and of course the third part, which is the quality. They are very essential, and they can be done with the physical health infrastructure. I'm really among the doctors. I'm basically a very fudgy kind of doctor. I've done my PhD. I have not had anything to do with the health systems, and this is the first time in my life that I'm working in a health area. But I do believe that in many sectors, including health, we can create situations, we can create platforms which can reduce the cost of medical services. We can actually make it more accessible even to the rural areas, and we can certainly improve the quality also. For affordability part, I must say that the government of India has done under the Ayushman Bharat. We are trying to help poor people to provide them subsidy and help and insurance cover to ensure that the health episodes do not become such catastrophic in their sort of lives so as to push them into the pit of poverty. That we are doing. But more importantly, what the Honorable Prime Minister under his Digital India mission has done during the last 7-8 years is really phenomenal. Let me begin by saying that there are very, very unique utilities, digital public goods, which this country has created. And there are no parallels anywhere. And, I look like I'm boasting because everyone looks at the West, what people in England or what people in US have done. Nobody realizes what India has done. So, for example, the digital identity system which India has created, which called Aadhaar, which has 1.29 billion holders, that ID system is so versatile that it can be plugged into any digital transaction. Now, that's very, very important, to understand. You can deliver digital, electronic KYCs. The doctor can digitally sign a prescription without, sort of signing it by his pen or whatever, and that's so much required for digital delivery of prescriptions, for example. So then you have the consent framework, which is so much required for medical records and health records and privacy framework. So and you have a digital locker where we today have 4 billion documents. And India has created a very, very unique payment platform, because for every digital transaction you require payments. When you teleconsult a doctor, and that you will have to pay the fees, and you can't pay the fees in cash. So basically you have the unified payment interface, UPI, which is doing 3 billion transactions a month. Now these are all enablers. These are all digital public goods which have been created and which will be used by any digital system, any digital delivery system. Fortunately, we also have a very robust now digital connectivity infrastructure. We have 1.2 billion mobile connections. We have 700 million internet users in this country, 600 million smartphones in this country, growing at the rate of 25 million every quarter. So these are all building blocks on which you can create a platform. And the National Digital Health Mission, which the Honorable Prime Minister launched on last 15th August, and we did it in 6 union territories, which actually, and this 1 year we have perfected the building blocks of that mission, which is the registry of the health facilities, registry of the doctor, health professionals, registry of laboratories, and the electronic health records, personal health records. All these things have been built, telemedicine kind of rules, etc. So I think what is going to happen is a similar, transformation I visualize in the use of technology in delivery of health services, as probably Aadhaar has done in the digitization of the entire landscape in our country. And I think that's where my strength or my capability or my understanding lies. I don't understand health domain as such, but what I do understand is that ICT, information and communication technology, has become quite permeable and can be leveraged in any domain whatsoever, including the health domain. And that's precisely what we will try to do. And that will probably create what you initially thought, resilient health delivery system. For example, India built CoWIN. We built CoWIN in January itself, and 16th January, Prime Minister launched the program. CoWIN has grown to 500 million, users in just about 6 months. Though that's the way it is. So I think we do have the wherewithal to build such platforms.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sharma. I can personally verify that idea because, our foundation, which is called the Piramal Foundation, we use Amrit, accessible medical records via integrated technology, which is NDHM compliant. And we use it in states like Assam, Andhra Pradesh. Every village is got electronic medical records today. It works to have frontline healthcare workers and primary healthcare workers delivery, which is, of course, not as good as it should be in our country. But it helps data analytics, helps the government. The chief minister on his dashboard can see where there is an outbreak of any infection or any epidemic or something immediately in few minutes. And that, I think, has created close to 1 million data points captured, healthline, health wellness, primary healthcare centers, and telemedicine. So you're absolutely right. You have built the infrastructure, and it is private foundations or other people who will climb on top of that and use that to do good. And that is, I think, one of the biggest benefits. So, Dr. Devi Shetty, you have also created so much public good. And one of the questions repeatedly asked is how can we build that culture of accountability? We have seen many issues during the COVID pandemic, including oxygen shortages, the shortages of doctors, the shortages of medical people in the right place at the right time. And how do we build this culture across the nation? I remember you wrote an amazing article in Times of India on how to rapidly deploy 1 million healthcare workers. And I see that other countries have followed your idea quite well and are implementing it. And so I'd like you to please say how you do it, of course, in one institution, but how do you do it across the country?
The culture of learning, adaptability, and accountability, I feel that the way India handled COVID pandemic is a classic example of how to implement all these three important requirements. It's very interesting. We always look at now we are retrospective analyzing what is the mortality in India, what's the morbidity, and we compare with England, we compare with Germany, US. But people forget what is the population of India, what is the population of England. The England population is slightly less than Karnataka state population, right? So how do you compare when few million people develop COVID and they land in front of the hospital? I want to know which health system in the world can adapt themselves to manage it. But when you look at all the limitations what we have done remarkably well, and this is the typical example of how India is learning and adapting itself. But going forward, I believe that Indian healthcare system will become the first healthcare system in the world which will dissociate healthcare from affluence. India will prove to the world that the wealth of the nation has nothing to do with the quality of healthcare its citizens can enjoy. And India will do it in a short period of time. You will be surprised, Swati, I can tell you, in the next 5 years, when you enter Indian hospitals, there will be a huge reception without receptionist. Receptionists will be working remotely. There will be large ICUs with no intensivist. Intensivists will be at home managing 50-bed, 100-bed ICUs. And there will not be people running around with a blood sample or a syringe or a file. There will be robots which will be doing all this work. And all these things are going to happen in India in the next 5 years. So if you talk about the adaptability of a health system to adapt itself for the changing needs, we are an example now and even in the future. I have no doubt about it. Because you have to first ask yourself how much money you spend for delivering this type of healthcare and compare this with any other country in the world, including the developing countries. You look at the cost of delivering healthcare in that part of the world and our part of the world. for the money we spend and what we get, it is mind-boggling. So essentially, we are an example for others to follow, the example of how adaptable and how accountable we are for human life.
Thank you, Dr. Shetty. So that brings to mind the idea of equity. You said that very important idea that every Indian will get good medical care, and whether he is from a remote area, from a tribal area, or from a city, the access will be equitable using technology that Dr. Sharma talked about. But my worry is one more thing, both of you, is that, after independence, we have one of the lowest spending in healthcare in the world, perhaps per capita. And we must invest in it. We must invest in healthcare. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us more than any other time in the history of our country that healthcare is important, that doctors are important. And I raise my hand in salute to the doctors and nurses and on the foreground, on the front line, been battling for 1.5 years for this COVID pandemic. But please, can we invest more? And does India really need much more than it spends so that we can really get equity? We work, sir, in the tribal areas of India where every indicator is less than what it is in the city, whether it's infant mortality, maternal mortality. These are forgotten people. These are 100 million people who live in the tribal areas so remote that doctors can't get there. And how do we ensure equitable access? We have started, sir, the Tribal Health Collaborative with the Piramal Foundation, Rockefeller, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, in across India to reach these people who I believe are forgotten by the healthcare system. And how can we then get equity, across India? Dr. Shetty?
The Swati, I agree with you that as a country we need to spend money, more money on healthcare. There is no doubt about it. But my observation, you talk about the tribal people deprived of healthcare. Why? Because when the city is short of doctors, which doctor will go to tribal area? So we have definitely scaled up our medical education, but we are 1.3 billion people. So when you put that number, the number what you need, we need at least 1 million doctors, at least 2 million nurses. So by putting money and building more hospitals, having more ICU beds, beds do not treat patients. We need doctors, nurses, and medical technicians. So essentially, we need to relook at how the doctors, nurses, technicians are trained. Unless we do that, we will never be able to, even if you double the spend on the healthcare, there won't be people because ultimately tribal area requires a hospital. Hospital requires doctors, nurses, and technicians. When the city themselves are starved of these people, why will anybody go there? Then what will happen is all of a sudden the salary will shoot up, everything becomes unviable. So we really need to, as a country, we need to come up with out-of-the-box solutions for training doctors, nurses, paramedics, and everyone. Now, isn't it possible? It is possible. We produce 24 million babies a year. If you tell me that we don't have that many doctors, that means we haven't used out-of-the-box solutions to train them. See, every hospital with over 100 beds should become an institute to train nurses. Nurses are not trained in the classroom. Nurses are trained bedside. But unfortunately, our education system doesn't allow where the training should happen for the training to be offered. So we need to relook at these issues. If we can do that, believe me, I'll give an example. If you want to double the number of doctors, all we have to do is ask the existing medical colleges to adopt one district headquarters hospital and take double the number of students, finish the preclinical in their existing campus. Indian medical colleges have the world's most luxurious campuses with 20 acres. which even medical college in London, the Guy's Hospital Medical School doesn't have. It's in 4 acres of land. So we can easily double the number of intake, and for clinical work, they should go to a district hospital. So district hospital will become a medical college hospital. First thing what happens is the quality of healthcare delivered in the district hospital will tremendously improve, because there are a lot of young doctors who want to learn, and they cannot learn unless they treat the patients. All these district hospitals will all of a sudden become vibrant. And it is the vibrancy which changes the dynamics of healthcare. It is the young people who will breathe fresh life into these hospitals. So we can do amazing things if only we come up with out-of-the-box solution to train doctors, nurses, and technicians. First thing is, every council who is the guardian of training medical doctors, nurses, technicians, they should be given a target by the government that this is the shortage, you figure out how to train them. That's all, without compromising on the quality. It is the duty of the councils to produce enough number of doctors, nurses, technicians for the safe health care delivery of the country.
I couldn't agree with you more, Dr. Shetty, and I'd like to offer an example of my own. I just joined a new European board called EssilorLuxottica, which is based in Paris and Italy, and they work all over the world. I was staggered by one number. They said that India has 300 million people with uncorrected refractive error. And I was thinking about it, I said that requires an optometrist. It doesn't require any invasive procedure to see your glasses. For the elderly, for schools, and yet our training, which is in classroom, is moved from 1 year to 2 years. Now we should be moving in the other way. We should be saying all this should be done digital, especially in tribal areas and aspirational areas. And can we move the government to do the opposite of increasing in classroom training and in fact, be creative and say we can't have something like this. Children doing badly in school because they can't see, the elderly, living a life which they can't see, truck drivers, can't drive properly, have accidents and things like that. So, I mean, here's just one example where we went in the reverse direction. And how do we use technology? Now, I'm so glad, Dr. Sharma, that because of COVID, we can actually sign digitally, as you say. Before, we couldn't do that. We could not prescribe a medicine digitally. And how will these kind of changes help in equity? How will they do what Dr. Devi Shetty calls an outer box? How will we never have shortages again of medical personnel?
I think what Dr. Devi Shetty has said and what you have said, I really have very little to add to, the way we should go about it. I completely agree with him that the numbers are staggering, and actually when you start comparing, you don't understand these numbers. They are millions, we are billions. So
Yes.
that makes the entire dynamics change.
Yes.
But I completely agree that this is also an advantage. Let's not look at the numbers as a very disadvantaged situation. Dr. Devi Shetty has always believed in the economies of scale on the healthcare system, and that's tremendously an advantage. And therefore, the solutions. India has always been a country of large numbers and very low value, high volume.
Yes.
Do you know that the average recharge of a prepaid telephone, how much is the amount? Rupees 10. 10 rupees is the average recharge. I was chairman of the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India before I joined this post, and it was 10 rupees. I was surprised. 10 rupees to नीचे गिर जाएगा तो हम लोग उठाएंगे भी नहीं उसको. This is the situation. So basically, but we make it. We are having 3 billion UPI transaction, and each transaction is just about average 200 rupees. 200 rupees is barely $3. So essentially, what is required is for us, the solutions also have to be unique. The solutions also have to be frugal. The solutions also have to be scalable. They have to be interoperable. So I think these are some of the attributes we must do, and that actually will require a completely different way of thinking than the current way of usual thinking, of the numbers in that manner. I'm very sure that the technology will what will technology do? One couple of things. One is it will remove the information asymmetry. Imagine in the COVID times when you had oxygen cylinder problem, then everybody was running helter and skelter. But you did not run helter and skelter for vaccination, because there was a very robust system, and we have done 500 million vaccinations, more than 500 million vaccinations, and absolutely each person's digital record is available on the platform. You can download the certificate. So basically, information asymmetry removal is one part. Secondly, connectivity will be used. For example, the refractive index issue which you gave, there are now technologies available where you can actually figure out the defect in the eyes using mobile phones and using very, 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 very inexpensive devices. And those must be, kind of promoted. So I think we must promote innovation. We must promote the use of technology. And I think there is a whole set of people in this country who can innovate and who can bring out appropriate, it was a long time back called appropriate technology. I would not use that word because that word has become old. But I think out of the box solutions, as Dr. Shetty rightly pointed out, I think if we use that paradigm, many of the problems can be resolved. And we have shown that we can create scalable solutions. We can create speedy solutions. We can really do wonders when such need arises. I have no doubt in the capability of the system. Right. It can deliver, provided we create a good system. That's the
Dr. Sharma, couldn't agree with you more. As a proud member of the Indian pharmaceutical industry, the prices of our drugs are even lower than that of your rupees 10. Yes. So I think we have served the country well during this pandemic in making our own vaccines and also many of the medicines required.
So Swati, sorry for interruption. Yeah. I wanted one of the very effective antibiotic, and I got the slide with one of the expensive antibiotic and one egg and one banana. And among the three, the antibiotic is the cheapest.
Yes. You're absolutely right. So you know what it is. So, having said that, I think the role of the Indian private sector played a huge part in the COVID pandemic. Producing so many million vaccines were all, private sector effort, and producing all the different medicines from steroids to infliximab to many were all produced in double quick time. There was no shortage of it at all. And we are very proud of that effort. And so what is that role of the private sector, Dr. Shetty? What can we do to amplify what Dr. Sharma said? We need innovation. We need frugal innovation. We need to reach the farthest and most remotest area with very simple but effective medical solutions. And what would the role of the private sector be in that, Miley?
The nearly 60% of the healthcare delivery of the country is managed today by the private sector, nearly 60%. Now, what we really need to do as a very effective section of the society which can address the country's needs, first thing is we have to look at 5 years, 10 years ahead, what needs to be done. I'll give you one example. We need to do close to 2 million heart operations in a year, right? And we are doing about 1.5 lakh heart operation. Out of that, 14% is done by us. So there is something wrong. So we need to scale up. So essentially, I personally feel that if we want to see a better future in healthcare for India, private sector should go for a large-scale adoption of digital medical records. And these digital medical records should be available to every patient in their own phone, and it should be totally portable. They can go to any healthcare system in the country, and they should be able to get their medical records. And that is possible. And there is no point in everyone designing their own EMR, a standard 1 or 2, 3 EMR, and everyone subscribes to it. And I can tell you, if we give a substitute for pen and paper in the doctors' of hands and nurses' hands, mortality in the hospital will go down significantly. and mortality, morbidity will go down. Secondly, the accessibility will improve significantly because for every cough, headache, patient doesn't have to see a doctor personally. We have close to 70 million diabetics, and there are hardly a few hundred diabetologists. Now, if you go for a large-scale diabetic clinic management, online diabetic clinic management, we can have a very, very effective diabetes management online. And we have proven that the blood sugar control of a patient who is managed online is better than a patient who insists on visiting the doctor. So essentially, our advantage as private sector is we have the freedom of adaptability and freedom of change, whereas a government always runs in a rigid structure. Coming up with the innovation in a government hospital is extremely hard, whereas in a private sector, we have the freedom to change. So I think one good thing is the difference between private and the government is becoming very, very it's not as distinct as it was before. It is getting diluted, and a lot of the state governments are now working closely with the private sector. That's a good thing. But on the whole, I personally feel that if we liberate the rigid structure of medical nursing, paramedical education, allow large-scale adoption of medical education as part of a healthcare delivery system. If every healthcare, every hospital becomes a center for training the future doctors, nurses, technicians, within 5 years, we would have reached our target of dissociating healthcare from affluence. It is possible. But for this to happen, we need large-scale digital adoption and reforms, major reforms, liberation of education.
No, you're right, sir. In fact, just as an example, the Piramal Foundation works with governments, Assam, Andhra Pradesh, for national digital health records, Amrit, and it's an open source platform. And as a foundation, a private foundation, we can do the experiment, we can do the work, and then we can give it to the governments to adopt in an open source way. And that has resulted in amazing dashboards being from every village going straight to the health minister, to the chief minister within minutes. And I'm very happy to say that more and more states are adopting digital electronic medical records. And this whole doctor in a box concept, which you said out of the box, but can we get a doctor in a box concept in the remotest areas, tribal areas where actually everything can be done digitally? And really that improves maternal and infant mortality. We proved it in the district of Araku, where maternal mortality is 0 since the last 3 years. And then we have tried to do this all over the country. So this is exactly the model that you are talking about, that the collaboration between private and public healthcare systems is now dissolving, with a lot of corporates taking up this national mission of health literacy. Just to talk a bit about the SDG 3 targets. We know that we are far behind the SDG goals, and it means well-being for all ages being declared at the Alma Ata, celebration of health. And what can we do to, if we are behind, how are we going to get there, get to the race, get to the finish line? Because we have to somehow put everything into place. Let's take, for example, infant and maternal mortality, sickle cell anemia. These anemia in women, 70% of women have anemia. And why can't we do these all preventable diseases? And how can we just make sure that we reach those goals very quickly? We'll have to increase the pace now to reach that goal. So how can we do it? And using whatever ideas you have would be great. Dr. Sharma, please.
Well, let me, allow me to add to what Dr. Shetty had mentioned in the previous just now introduction. I think what is important is that while it is absolutely true that the private sector will have to play an extremely important role in the delivery of health services, they are doing now also, as you said rightly, 60%. and they will continue to do that. What is important is actually a true partnership between the government and the private sector. And how do you make that happen? So one which we, the digital health platform which one is talking about, you see, you have digital solutions currently. And Dr. Piramal said that, how the dashboard and how the digital health records are being collected and how the data points are being generated. Now, what is going to happen is if you have, let's say these systems are all silo systems. For example, 1mg delivers medicines, delivers, drugs. Then they have their own doctors. Their doctors prescribe. So everybody is building an end-to-end digital solutions today. What is required is actually to have an interoperable digital platform. And let me explain what it is meant by that. Let's talk of e-commerce digital platform. So you have Amazon and you have let's say Flipkart or whatever. Now they basically, if you want to sell it on Amazon, you have to become a seller on Amazon, and you have to have an Amazon application, and you can purchase and do the transaction on Amazon platform. They themselves have developed a currency, whatever, Amazon Pay or Amazon Pay balance or whatever. So this is, and what these platforms do, basically these digital platforms have a tendency of having a winner all situation where, you remember Facebook is there today. There used to be a platform called Orkut some time back. People have forgotten that, because essentially these platforms have that network effect and they continue to, demolish everybody and anybody, and they become singular monopolies. Now, if you want to, tackle that situation, and what we want to do, we want to create a level playing field platform, not a platform which is discretionary. Today, you see the difference which is happening in government and the platforms and kind of disputes which are arising. They are arising because they are all, become too powerful. They have become too monopolistic. So what is required is government there has a role to play in creating a digital platform where you can discover, you can use any front-end solution, any front-end application, and you can go to any doctor, or you can search the doctor, you can search a pharmacy, you can search a solution. So that's, and you can search even the digital solutions. So what this National Digital Health Mission does, very briefly, we have horizontal utilities like Aadhaar, payment systems, etc. Then on top of that, we have the digital, domain utilities, which are essentially drug registries of the doctors, registries of the laboratories, registries of the pharmacies, etc. And on top of that, you have what is called unified health interface. That's what we are visualizing, similar to unified payment interface. And then on top of that, you will have applications. So that will create a complete grid where private sector and public sector will be able to seamlessly participate, number one. Number two, the electronic health record, the personal health record, people will be able to keep in their mobiles, or they will be transferable, in the sense that they will be portable. So the portability is also very important. So you can go from place A to place B, and your medical records, they are accessible. Either you can keep them on the phone, but if you don't want to keep them on the phone, there should be a system where they should be accessible from place A to place B. So therefore, I think to think of that kind of situation. And today, India as a country is capable of building that, because we have certain digital public utilities which enable the creation of such platform. No other country can do it, believe me. So I think that is something which we need to focus on. And I'm very happy to have interacted with many of you, from the medical fraternity, from the hospital people, and they have all been very excited at this idea. And I think we will take it forward with your support. And I think the public-private partnership is extremely, extremely important, and we should really do it this way only.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. You've really given us the most important agenda of collaboration, of doing things together as achieving this national mission. And Dr. Shetty, can we wrap up with your 3 most important points for resilience in healthcare systems?
Okay. Thank you, Swati. As I said, let's hope and pray to God that there will not be another 5 years, 10 years down the line, COVID-like epidemic. But if it happens, what we need to do now to overcome that. As a country with over 1 billion population, we need to double or triple the number of institutions which can train the medical manpower. That is the most important thing. Second, no paper and pen should be used in delivering healthcare. Everything has to be digital. And the third is the possibility of doubling the number of critical care beds, because we believe that what holds the country for ransom is the lack of critical care beds with the trained medical manpower. We should assume that at any time a thing like this happens, will the country be able to mobilize that many beds, monitors, people to manage it? And we will have, by the grace of God, at least 5 to 10 years time to prepare. And a country like ours can easily prepare. I have no doubt about it.
Thank you, Dr. Shetty. So 3 words: people, together, and technology.
Yes.
I think that sort of sums up the idea of resilience. Thank you so much to the Daj Foundation and for inviting us. And we've had a delightful conversation. Thank you for spending time to our 2 panelists who were amazing. Napina.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all for such an evocative session on resilient health systems. It kept me engrossed, and I have so many notes on interoperable digital platforms and health grid and unified health interfaces. I think it was an inspiring session that traversed technology, identity, and accountability. I think your discussion also provided very pragmatic but optimistic perspectives on some of the ideas that our attendees can build on. Thank you, ma'am, for your thought-provoking questions that I think triggered many of these amazing insights. Thank you, Dr. Shetty. Thank you, Dr. Sharma. It was indeed an excellent session. Thank you. Thank you all the participants for making the time to attend today's session. We will see you in the morning at 9 a.m. when we begin with a session titled An Institutional Approach to Sustainable Development. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Switch it off.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful meeting you, Dr. Shetty, and I think we'll, inshallah, meet someday in person.
Yes,
and
looking forward
have a cup of tea together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.